Welcome to DreamMachine. My name is Arun.
And my name is Patricia.
Hey Patricia, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Yeah, so can you believe that this is our kind of last episode of DreamMachine, because we've officially caught up with every single DreamWorks film.
Yeah, pretty much. So this is kind of our series. Well, not really our series finale. Basically, this is the episode that wraps up all the reviews. So for those of you who do not know and just tuned in, and let me tell you something, you've missed a lot of entertainment over the last, good grief, 36 episodes. I think we've recorded pretty much. So basically, we've been reviewing all the DreamWorks films, and if you want to start from episode 1, then we welcome you to do so on Old School Lane Podcast. And also, just to let you guys know, eventually they will be posted up onto the Arrow Meta Show podcast feed. It's just taking a bit of time for me to re-edit them all and to basically make them fit for podcasting and also for outside broadcast as well. So they're basically just being refitted. So once we get all that sorted out, then eventually those episodes will. All the catch-up episodes will basically start appearing. But there's also one last other announcement we need to make before, obviously, we kick off How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, and that is that we are still taking all your ratings for the DreamWorks films for the final episode of this series, which is going to be our top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. So still some time for you guys to get in. This isn't the final deadline or anything like that, because this episode is going up. We're actually going to announce the deadline just before we post the top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. So guys, if you still want to get your ratings in, and by the way, if you go onto the Google form, which is going to be in the link description below, you do not have to have watched every single DreamWorks films. Only put ratings in from 1 to 10 for the films that you have watched. If you want to miss 1 or miss 5 or 10 or whatever, you're much welcome to do so. We basically just want to see the films that you've seen, and we want to hear what you think of them, whether they're either 1 to 10. And then once the deadline passes, we will then do the top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. And so how it will work is that I will basically be a third of the weight of the ratings, and then Patricia will be another third of the weight, and you guys fill in basically will be the tiebreaker, because we do have a lot of films that have basically got the same ratings, and so you guys are going to be the determining factor of where it ends up in the DreamMachine ranking. So yeah, should be a lot of fun. But Patricia, are you ready basically to heat things up?
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, we are here for the final review of DreamMachine for this series, so here we go. So for our final serving of DreamMachine for 2019, at least until at least September, is How to Train Your Dragon, also known as How to Train Your Dragon 3D, and also basically just Dragons, or How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World. So we had various number of names, but basically it all started off with How to Train Your Dragon, and then it ended up with the second film that came out after that, and then finally we have what I think is probably the best third film of all, I guess, so far. I think of all the films I've seen. Let me safely say this. When it comes to 3, I usually get a little bit nervous, because I sometimes feel like, at least in the past, that when we get to 3, it's not always as great as either 1 or 2. But guys, I have to say, How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World is basically probably my favorite third installment of any film.
Yeah, okay. And I think it's hands down, in my opinion, the best trilogy or the best installment of movies from DreamWorks. Like every single one of them have been incredibly solid, and they get better and better as they go on. And just like what you were saying earlier about like the third installment is usually like a sign of running out of ideas or ideas that seem pretty cool but didn't get executed as it should have, or it just tries to do way too much or way too little. Well, we talked about Shrek the Third and how that was a massive disappointment. Madagascar 3, there was a lot of padding and there was a lot of stuff that just felt kind of unnecessary, but only got really good at the final act. And Kung Fu Panda 3, well, we did like it. It just didn't have the epicness compared to the second film. So this one, on the other hand, is not only a great film, but is also like a perfect conclusion to the trilogy.
Yeah. So our story begins in the first act, which I have to say is a pretty badass way to start with. Our heroes sneaking into onto a ship to free some dragons, and that's all been led by Hiccup, and also his mother is also far away, actually observing what is going on. So effectively, she's kind of like changed the tone a little bit of the basically how Berk works in regards to like rescuing dragons and things like that. So she's kind of like running Renaissance in this. And so you have Hiccup and you have his gang come in, break out all these dragons, and then they have this epic battle. And here's the thing about this, though. I mean, obviously we're going to be kind of like talking maybe a bit too generally. I think I know I'll try and keep it between first, second, and third act, but some of the battles in this, sort of played it safe a little bit for me. Like, I really thought we were going to get to some more kind of like maybe like some epicness, maybe even some deaths in this. Maybe I don't know. I understand that they need to go by a certain rating, for these types of films. But I don't know. Like I see all these battles. Maybe because I've been spoiled because I've seen loads of battles in the past. Avengers. All the Marvel films. 300. If you really want to get gory. And, so I'm kind of been spoiled for, massive battles in this. So I guess, they were fun battles to watch, but, fun fight scenes and things like that. But I don't know. I really thought it was going to take it one step further.
Especially since in the last film, we had, people die.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we had his father fell in battle.
Exactly.
And he comes back in, all these, these dream sequences. Mm-hmm. So I think a very very kick-ass way to start, by the way, and also it kind of feels like it holds up as his own movie as well when you go to that, because you don't necessarily have to have seen the last two to see what was going on. The fact that it kind of feels like it is a sequel, obviously, to the other two movies, but it feels a bit self-contained as well. Your story here is that here are these bunch of, badass guys who want to go in there and rescue dragons. And they are the only Viking tribe, within, basically the entire world that actually does this stuff. So,
that is true.
It makes these guys fun and it makes them unique. And, you don't even have to watch the other two films to think, oh, hey, this is the way things are. And so you can definitely tell from Berk now that the village is becoming massively overpopulated. There's also the scene where Hiccup and Astrid are basically being encouraged to tie the knot in this, which I think obviously they're obviously trying to complete the ship and get that sorted out as well. And also you get some fun antics from the side characters, but I don't know, they seem a bit out of the way when they try and give them screen time, but you're too fixated upon the dragons, and obviously with Astrid and Hiccup, to kind of not really appreciate them all that much to me. Mm-hmm. I think. And so I don't know, for me, I guess my question would be, should they have had even more screen time? Maybe, I don't know,
that's kind of hard to that's kind of hard to say, especially since we need to address the elephant in the room about how one of the actors, TJ Miller, who played as Tough Nut, he had to be replaced by Justin Ruppel because of if you recall about the infamous incident about, his sexual allegations, and he was arrested due to the bomb threat that he claimed it was, but it was a fake. So yeah, I think that maybe that kind of hurt some of the portrayals of some of the characters. And I think I do remember in an interview about how There were some characters that were supposed to be in this movie, but they were cut, such as, if you remember, Drago from the second movie was originally supposed to be in this third movie where he's supposed to have like a redemption arc. But unfortunately, it was cut for time, and they weren't able to give him enough screen time so that he can be able to flesh out the character. So yeah, they really wanted this movie to be not only the final installment in the How to Train Your Dragon series, but they really wanted to push the limits into a big epic promotion and big epic proportions in with marketing and with the trailer. I remember when I first saw the trailer, I was just like literally blown away by it. But yeah, I think that because of DreamWorks, when they were going through their massive struggles over the years, and we talked about this in Dream Machine about how Jeffrey Katzenberg, he left as CEO, and that DreamWorks, their films were no longer going to be distributed by 20th Century Fox, but Universal. So, and the fact that, the previous movies that we did talk about they were decent hits in the box office, but they didn't rank up as much money, compared to previous DreamWorks films. So that kind of was during their low point. So yeah, I think that a lot was writing into this movie, that there were some things that had to be cut or had to be removed due to various reasons or another.
Well, interestingly enough, going back to Universal, the fact that it actually took me by surprise when I saw the Universal logo. The fact that I watched this in in HD. So, I mean, the other ones I've been watching in SD because basically I've just been renting them for cheap prices. But I decided to give this one a pretty, an epic finish. And I have to say, the Universal logo, you hear this boomingness of it. It wasn't as to what I was expecting at all. And then here's an interesting thing about this, though. They didn't mess around with the DreamWorks logo.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, so that was a refreshing change. Oh my god, probably my least favorite one is probably Captain Underpants. And I get what they were going for, but it just comes across as obnoxious. But the fact that they kind of said, "Oh, hey, this is DreamWorks, and here's the movie," kind of kept it self-contained, that I don't know why. I just feel that was a big plus for me. I was getting kind of sick and tired of all the messing around a little bit. I mean, at least with in the Pixar films, at least when they mess around with the lampshade, at least with the lamp, at least it's subtle, but not so much in DreamWorks films.
Yeah, I mean, DreamWorks and subtlety are not in the same category.
No, not at all. So, obviously, the Night Fury ends up finding this female Night Fury, or Bright Fury, if you will. And so, obviously, they have this love thing currently going on. And but as we all know, it's if you've been watching this film, and by the way, spoilers, by the way, if you've not seen it yet, but obviously, it's a kind of a trap that's been laid by our villain. And to be honest with you, in regards to our villain, he's kind of borrowed from Anton Ego, and he's kind of here's the thing about this, his meaning of his purpose really in this film is very messy. I don't think they kind of decided what he was going to be. I mean, they didn't know if he was going to be a psychotic villain. We didn't know if he was going to be a villain grasping for attention of his people. We didn't know if he was a villain who was kind of the guy from Rescuers Down Under. I mean, I don't know about you, Patricia. I think our villain in this didn't really. I mean, his purpose in the movie changed from from scene to scene. If you ask me, I don't think they kind of make up his mind about who exactly he was. Is he Heath Ledger's Joker, or is he is he who is he in this film?
I don't really know, and I don't know if maybe this is how he was in the book, because remember that How to Train Your Dragon was based off of the book series, so maybe he was an amalgamation of the different villains. Maybe his portrayal in the book is a lot more darker, that maybe they were oh, we can't do that for the kids. I'm not sure. That's actually a really good question.
But by the way, I know I say this pretty much every episode. I have not read the books. So, I mean, I'm judging this purely on the movie. So,
right, and the fact that as mentioned earlier, that Drago was originally supposed to be in the third film as kind of a returning villain to get a redemption arc, and they had to cut it for time. Maybe some of the personality into this new villain was incorporated from Drago, and maybe some of the actions that he was supposed to do, but then they couldn't add it in. So they thought, we don't want to lose anything that we would have had from the stories that we would have put in. So let's just mishmash it all together into one.
Yeah, I like how they made Hiccup quite strong in this film. in my opinion. Like, the fact that he could, he's going on his arc to kind of like stand on his own, and like, he knows he's not going to have his dragon for much longer. I'm pretty glad they went, obviously, the route that they did. And to me, I mean, obviously, they showed how much support he has around him and everything, and that, they, obviously, they don't believe that, he's the screw-up anymore. They actually do believe in him being this kind of like leader of the Viking clan and everything. And so I'm really glad they obviously showed him and he needed to go on this arc, obviously, to he's basically where Avatar Aang basically was at the end of the series. Pretty much, he was admired by, obviously, except everyone but the Fire Lord. But so I mean, I'm glad they went that route, and obviously he had weaknesses in this film. Obviously he had poor judgment in this, but they had to do that obviously for conflict in the story. But I'm pretty glad that they went the route that he did, and I think he was a pretty strong lead. I think. And
it's just, and even though that you mentioned earlier about like you don't have to watch the previous films in order for you to get to understand the plot of the third film, that is true. And we did mention this for Toy Story 3 and Toy Story 4. It's just like what you mentioned in the Toy Story 4 episode of Pixmix, that you really need to watch the other films in order for you to get fully invested with the characters and with what's going on in the story, because, just like you were mentioning about Hiccup.
I said that for Toy Story 3. I mean, but in regards to obviously that was to the ending scene with Andy. I mean, obviously you have to watch the other kind of films to kind of like get involved in the moment. But in regards to Toy Story 4, I said that stood out on its own. Yeah, sure. But I think that in order for you to get fully invested with how the progression of Hiccup became from him being like clumsy and awkward and kind of lost teenager to essentially like a strong man who has led his village into prosperity with the dragons, and him becoming a really capable leader with his friendship with Hiccup and with all of his teammates. I think that it's like incredibly strong, and definitely something that you really need to watch the previous films to really and truly appreciate. Yeah, and let me say his armor and his weapon is awesome. I love the fact that he's like wearing dragon scale, and like he's Master Chief. Pretty much, like look at him. He's like he stands there with his helmet, with his gear, and obviously with this, obviously with like a fire sword. Like he has the most awesome looking, he looks like a superhero. Pretty much, like it's like it's great. It's great to watch him, and so when he's fighting, it's brilliant. And obviously his at the end when they all come together and like there's all the teamwork's coming involved, and I don't know, like the whole teamwork aspect that his mother was trying to get them all to go through. I mean, like that it was mentioned like here and there, but not necessarily obviously put to the forefront. I think there was, obviously moving the whole clan to the hidden world, and obviously, the stuff with the dragons, I think overtook, everything else. And in order to say that it wasn't, I guess one of the great things about this film is that there's so much going on, I think, in it as well. I think, but at the same time, it all kind of like intertwines together. I mean, how many times in DreamMachine have we watched films where it's kind of like, oh, a load of random stuff is currently going on, but it has no kind of like coherency to it,
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So, in regards to obviously Grimmel is like after the Night Fury, and then it's so obviously that's his kind of fixation. But again, his thing's all over the place really, and obviously going to the actual Vikings themselves. I like the idea that they see Hiccup as this leader, but at the same time they kind of like you can see that they can easily go off the rails a little bit, and he needs to keep control. And so I guess Toothless and Hiccup kind of share this bond of like how he's kind of control this kind of like motley crew of people, I guess. And so that the relationship between Hiccup and Toothless in this, in the very end as well, like when they have to say goodbye, like that. I mean, again, I know you probably have to. I did tear up at that bit, but I probably because I've always watched the other two films. At least at the end of this film, at least the connection is understandable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
they've been through so much together.
So obviously with Astrid, I mean, she's obviously, you know, a forefront in this, and she's obviously very supporting of Hiccup in this, and so she obviously has a. But I mean, it's like it kind of feels like she. I don't know, like it feels kind of weird because it's usually like Hiccup's mother would like say, "Oh, Astrid, you better go talk to him," and like so. I think she kind of like isn't. I thought she would follow more on instincts. I would have thought with Hiccup. I mean, obviously it was her suggestion to go find, you know, Toothless in the hidden world. You know, obviously that was her thing, but. Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like Astrid, was kind of more prompted to kind of like, you know, talk to Hiccup rather than actually kind of like, you know, asserting herself, you know, to kind of be prompting herself to do it, you know.
Yeah, I can see what you mean, for sure. Because in the previous movie, she was very independent and assertive and chooses on when she wants to do things and nobody's going to stop her. Whereas here, she's like very supportive for Hiccup and she wants to, you know, basically like be there for him, which, you know, is very supportive, sure. Yeah. It definitely, you know, is kind of interesting about the progression from her character as well.
Mm-hmm. So, also we're getting towards the final scene, and obviously we get to Night Furies. We've been captured by Grimmel, and then mind you, you can tell how villainous he actually is, because even to the point where he's actually even turning on his own. The commanders of all these armies, and he turns around and says, "Oh hey, I'm in this for myself," which, you know, obviously I've complained about the imagine that would have been an interesting turn. Like, you know, if all of a sudden, like, it's like, oh hey, I'm here to help you guys out to get this Night Fury, and then he turns around and says, oh hey, I'm doing this for myself. That would have been a very, very dark turn, and I think that would have enforced him more as a villain. I think if they actually kind of like, you know, had him a bit more linear and then built up to that moment.
It almost would have been like La Sombra in a sense, in which when, you know, they're working together so they can be able to retrieve Le Corazon, but then when they were like following Gerald and Helga's path, like one by one, each of the members of his group dies until he's like the only one and doesn't even bat an eye whatsoever.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say Grimmel's like La Sombra. I think they're two different. I think they are two completely different villains at least in my opinion. But
no, I'm talking about like his actions, not like their similarities.
But in Grimmel didn't pretend to be, you know, Hiccup's friend. I mean, from the very get-go, he was he even snuck into his house and threatened him, like, you know, and so it was, you know, from the get-go, you knew that he was the bad, you know, you knew that he was Hiccup's, you know, antagonist in this, you know, while as La Sombra, like, he pretended to be Eduardo, and then obviously didn't reveal himself until like later on in the film. Yeah, so that was kind of, he was, you know, La Sombra was more like Long John Silver from Treasure Island than he was. You know, and then he was, you know, say Grimmel from, you know, How to Train Your Dragon. So I kind of disagree on that, but
that's fair.
Yeah. So obviously we get another epic fight, and this time you can see that you know, the team are all working together, and then basically it's I mean, it's just typical kind of like save the day. But I mean, there was a moment in the film where you genuinely thought that Hiccup was gonna die. When they're falling through the sky, and like you know, it would have, mind you, it would have been pretty more epic if like, you know, some punches were thrown whilst they were falling. But that's just me. But I mean, the fact that he, you know, Grimmel basically was just tearing off you know, Hiccup's suit and everything like that, and then obviously he had to sacrifice his leg in order to you know, again to make sure he can escape from the bad guy, and then you know, obviously Grimmel falls to his death, and then obviously we get the trust between because in this it's not actually Toothless who saves him, it's the Light Fury who does it. So
exactly.
Which I thought, you know, I think they were building up to that moment, so I thought, and I really thought that at one point that, you know, Toothless was just going to come out of nowhere and just save him anyway. So I guess having the Light Fury was kind of surprising.
I thought that Toothless was going to save him as well. So it's actually really nice that we get to see the Light Fury come by and save Hiccup. Definitely like a nice little build up towards their trust towards each other.
Mm-hmm. So all is well in the end, and then we get this lovely little marriage ceremony, which I think I always have a soft spot for. I love weddings. So like that for me was pretty good, and also an interesting bit at the end as well, where it didn't make all that much sense though, because it was like, I thought at the very end, I thought the dragons were all going to go live in their own world, and I mean, I don't understand why Hiccup and Astrid would take their children on this massive boat ride off to the hidden world to like go see them. Like I was very surprised to kind of see that scene. But I guess maybe now Hiccup and Astrid are basically flying their dragons in secret until
I mean,
on.
I think it was mentioned in the end about how Hiccup was mentioning about how the people at Berk were going to be the only ones to keep the dragon secret, and they'll be protected, and that they'll live in peace and harmony. So maybe, it was kind of like a sense in which, they wanted to check to see how things are going, and, well, at the same time, just bringing the kids along because everybody loves a road trip.
Mm-hmm. So that was the end of the film. And here's the thing about this, though, and I say this for the very last bit, and that is this. I mean, I know some people are saying that this is going to be the final installment of How to Train Your Dragon 3, How to Train Your Dragon. I'm not too sure about that. I do believe that we will see somewhere down the line, we will see another How to Train Your Dragon film.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, again, we believe that this is probably like the end of the book series. So if they decide, hey, let's continue outside of the books, then that could be a possibility. And I know that they are doing another How to Train Your Dragon series on Netflix. So maybe they will continue the story like that. I don't know. I mean, maybe in a movie. I mean, if it goes into a much more successful route than the previous DreamWorks movies, which it has, it both financially and critically, then yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But very similar to Kung Fu Panda 3, in which they say this is the last one, and very similar to Madagascar 3, in which they say this is the last one. They tend to keep their word and saying like, yeah, this is the last one. But then again, we are having a reboot of Shrek and with Puss in Boots, but that's going to be with Illumination and not with DreamWorks. So that should be, well, I mean, it will be with DreamWorks, but it will be done by different people with the Chris Meledandri who works at.
I think we'll probably end up doing is I think the next How to Train Your Dragon film should be done with a new generation of characters. I believe it should be done with like this is like maybe like 100 years in the future, and maybe like Hiccup and Astrid are long gone, and now they're only people who kind of like remember the dragons are basically his children. And then it probably might be like how Berk has like this generation has never rode dragons, or has never like, I mean, they've only just heard about them and just keep the secret, and now maybe they get get curious and now want to actually go see the dragons for themselves maybe, and then they basically kind of like it kind of kicks off this whole shenanigans ensue basically. So
it kind of like reminds me a little bit of like Legend of Korra in a sense, in which then that took place 75 years after Avatar: The Last Airbender. Aang is gone, and most of the characters have gotten really old, and the new generation is stepping in and taking care of the balance in the world. So yeah, it'd be really nice to see the continuation of How to Train Your Dragon with like a new generation of kids protecting dragons, and how modern technology has improved since then. So I like to see that.
Yeah. So, but until then, we wrap up the final episode of DreamMachine, and pretty short and sweet. But I mean, we rarely have any complaints about this film, really, except for obviously some of the It
is definitely one of the best DreamWorks films that we've seen. And like I said, I think that this might be, my favorite trilogy amongst the DreamWorks films. I mean, every single one of them is just amazing, and each one of them gets better and better. So I really enjoyed having this as our last episode until we go to September, where we'll be talking about Abominable.
Oh, who knows? Maybe Abominable might be good. Maybe
it will be good. We'll just have to see how it compares to the other abominable snowmen or Yeti movies that had came out over the last few years. There was Smallfoot. There's Missing Link, and I think there's another one, but I'm not. I don't know what it's called. But
I'll safely say this in regards to this type of genre. I mean, surely we can't get any worse than Norm of the North. Surely we can't get worse than that. So.
Yeah, we cannot. So you have a good point there.
Okay. So, coming up next episode is going to be our top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films. And so the rating, the poll is still open. So please rate them 1 to 10. And also, if you've not seen one of them, you don't have to rate it. You can just rate the ones that you've seen. Go to the link below and get your final say. And we will be announcing the deadline on our Old School Lane and also our Facebook pages as well. So we'll let you guys know pretty loudly when the deadline is going to be coming up. And when it does, then we're going going to go right to that episode, and we're going to tell you exactly what has happened. So, I mean, who do we know? I mean, I guess maybe we should probably do some predictions now, maybe, just to fill up the time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm going to basically say that, I'm probably going to end up jinxing this if need be, but I think we're all in agreement, at least looking at, the way DreamMachine has gone the way it has. I think we're definitely going to say that Shark Tale is probably going to take number one place in the top worst DreamWorks animated films.
Agreed. Everybody pretty much says that. Very similar to how in Pixar movies, everybody says Cars 2 is the worst. So, yeah, I think that Shark Tale is definitely going to be like the worst one. Other films that I would probably see in the polls for like best and worst, I'm going to predict this. I'm going to predict it's probably going to be... I'm thinking it's going to probably be all the sequels. All the sequels to the DreamWorks films are probably going to be in there. I'm going to guess Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda 2, one of the How to Train Your Dragon movies, I'm not sure, but definitely one of the sequels. And I'm going to guess maybe Prince of Egypt will be there. And the fifth one, that's going to be... It's going to be really hard to say which one. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking maybe it'll be either... Wallace and Gromit, or maybe
It's an interesting debate, isn't it? And I tell you what, I mean, I guess I'm kind of going down the same route, and that's the reason why all you guys listening, need to help us out with this, because you guys are going to be the determining factor of whether this is going to be either number 1 or number 2 or number 3 or number 5, or also actually on the worst side of the scale as well. Guys are going to determine what's the worst DreamWorks film. So, I mean, in regards to the worst ones, I think we can definitely say, obviously we say Shark Tale, but obviously, there are some pretty heavy competitors for, the top 4 places. Like, Home is definitely one of them. I'm trying to think, for the B
Boss
movie.
Baby.
Boss Baby is definitely one of them. B movie is definitely one of them. So, there's some pretty, while we can see some gems in the DreamWorks animation collection, there are some pretty big duds in this as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, the duds are very noticeable. It's like with Pixar, when you see a bad movie, it will be forever known as a bad movie.
Mm-hmm. But until then, everybody, you still got to help us vote for this, so I hope that's going to give you some encouragement of which way you're going to vote. So, until then, my name is Aaron.
And my name is Patricia.
Take care, and we will see you in the final episode for the top 5 best and top 5 worst DreamWorks animated films here on DreamMachine. Until then, see you later.
See you later. Vote wisely.